Hey everyone, I'm Mike Prue, and yes, finally, Star Trek Picard is going to be premiering on CBS All Access this week in just like 4 days. I was so lucky, thank you CBS All Access, to attend the LA premiere where we got to watch the first 3 episodes of Star Trek Picard. We got a really cool lapel pin for attending the premiere. And it's the new insignia that can be seen on the latest uniforms in Starfleet. Now, I am not going to give away any spoilers or talk about any specifics whatsoever, only how I felt as I was watching the show. Star Trek The Next Generation was so central to some of my most formative years. It premiered at the beginning of high school for me, and it ended at the end of college. And yes, I was the guy that had this poster of the season 4 cast in his high school locker. Hashtag nerd alert. And in college, my girlfriend at the time used to come over every Saturday at 7 o'clock and we would watch the latest episode of The Next Generation together. And that's a memory that I'm always going to have. Why was it so important to me? One of the first things is that it taught me a ton about leadership. I was someone that modeled myself around the leaders of the series. I kind of took bits and pieces of each one of the main characters, mostly centered around Captain Picard and his style of leadership. From him, I took away someone with a deep moral conscience, directness, integrity. I used to watch and rewatch episodes and analyze everyone's leadership styles, how they problem solved, how they handled situations. It became, in effect, training for me as I developed my own leadership skills and continue to do so. The other aspect of Star Trek The Next Generation was the fact that it opened my mind to greater society. I dug up this old college paper that I wrote for my communications class. I wrote it on November 22nd, 1992. An excerpt from the paper's abstract I wrote: as historical time moves closer to modern day, we see a drastic change in how people of color and women are being portrayed in television roles. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go. And remember, this was 27 years ago. We've made progress, but we still have a long way to go. So I wrote one sentence here: in several other episodes, we see women's status in 24th century society as admirals, captains, judges, and engineers. And then I quote, in general, women are shown in positions of power and authority. As for the male characters, they are walking, talking proof that a man can be fair, respectful, vulnerable, and rational. Here's another excerpt. In the new series, we see a total departure from traditional gender roles. Dr. Beverly Crusher, for instance, is one of the most liberated, independent, yet wholehearted women I've ever seen. Her husband died 17 years ago, and she was left to raise her only son. She is not portrayed as being at all inferior to the captain or any other male on board the ship. In all actuality, her rank is commander. Dr. Crusher has the sole power to relieve the captain of duty if she sees the necessity to do so. And then I went on to give some examples. I end the paper by saying, Star Trek The Next Generation gives us hope that we can overcome the perils of this world and focus instead on learning more about ourselves and how we can contribute in a positive manner to our society. People often say that we can learn how to deal with the future by examining our past. Why don't we instead just learn from the future that Star Trek The Next Generation gives us and strive to attain a similar universe? And I should note that I got an A on this. So let's talk about Star Trek Picard. During the premiere in LA, we saw the first 3 episodes. And let me say again, I'm not going to talk about any specifics or spoilers, but I will say this. I went in, of course, with what I just shared with you about my love of Star Trek The Next Generation, with really high expectations, and they were exceeded. The show was incredibly cinematic. It was elevated for me even beyond the motion pictures featuring the Next Generation cast. There have been public reports, even some of the producers talking about the fact that the pacing is different from Star Trek Discovery, but I found those 120 minutes to go by like that. I couldn't believe that 3 episodes went by so fast. I didn't want it to end, and I was left longing for so much more, because there are so many little moments that I want to go back and rewatch and rewind and pause. There was a lot to take in, and it was beautifully done. One of the best things for me about Star Trek Picard is the way that it respected the past, and specifically how it handled the events in the Next Generation and in the movies. There obviously was careful and impeccable consideration to not only connecting certain dots, but doing it in a way that didn't feel forced, didn't feel like fan service, and was just so natural and so native to the new series. It was the very first scene, and the fact that it acted as a transition point from the old Next Generation series, almost in tone, to all of a sudden propelling to what the tone and the mission and the vibe is of Star Trek Picard. It has grown up. It is a mature series. It is a series that feels modern and compelling. Here's the thing. The character of Picard, although he is older and he has gained so many more experiences since we last saw his character 18 to 20 years ago, at his essence, he is still Jean-Luc Picard. And this is important because for me, when I watched Star Wars: The Last Jedi, I didn't recognize the character of Luke Skywalker. What the writers and the directors did to that character, and I left with a pit in my stomach, because that was not the Luke Skywalker that I looked up to and that I revered as a kid. Jean-Luc Picard, I recognize. I see him. It's him. After all these years, I still feel a deep connection to that character, to that leader, and his value system. So Star Trek Picard feels like a natural evolution of Jean-Luc Picard's character. Everything felt right. I also liked how there were so many different dots connected from the Next Generation and some of the movies that it just felt natural. And let me end with this. When I go back and rewatch episodes of the Next Generation, there's a nostalgic factor for me. But there are a lot of pieces around how the story is told, the production value. It was a little bit too perfect that just didn't hold up for me in 2020. Star Trek Picard, as I watched that show, it just resonated with so many different facets of where I am in my life now. Because like Jean-Luc Picard, I'm 18 years older as well. I've had 18 years of experiences since I last saw that character in Star Trek Nemesis. There are things that Jean-Luc Picard is going through in his life now that I feel like I am as well. And at the end of the day, my takeaway after watching those 3 episodes is that one of the key messages is about staying true to your values and your integrity, and ensuring that you live your life in a way that makes you feel valued and that you matter. So be sure to tune in to the series premiere of Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access this Thursday, January 23rd. And thanks for watching. I will see you next time.